we're going to talk about budgeting and forecasting, and specifically budgeting and forecasting revenue. We're going to walk through a couple of the mistakes that I see business owners make, and then we're going to talk about a way to do it better so that you can not only better forecast your revenue, but you can better understand the activities that are going into creating that revenue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from scratch. So in other words, I just have a blank spreadsheet here. You can tell it's not all the way blank. What I have done is I have downloaded financial statements out of QuickBooks. This is where most owners would start. They would merely just export their income statement from last year by month. And here we have all of our financial information that we can use to start our budgeting process. Here you can see this is Sweat Fitness Bar LLC. It's a fitness business. You can see our revenue right here, $526,000 last year. The business made $53,000 of net income. So where do most of our business owners start? What they're going to do is they're going to create another sheet. They're going to copy over their revenue. So here's our two revenue items. We're going to just have a by month listing up here up top. There we go. And then what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know what, I'd like to do 5% better. And why 5%? I don't know. Maybe they might think they're going to increase their prices by 5%. Maybe they think that their additional marketing is going to increase things by 5%. So what do? They go over here. They take last year's January. They take it times 1.05. And here we have our budgeted revenue for January. We're just going to copy that formula all the way over, all the way down, and voila, we have budgeted our revenue for 2024. And look at this. Let's just see what we had come up with. We'll put a total column over here. $552,000. What did we do last year? $525,000. And a lot of business owners would say, yep, we're done. We have forecasted our revenue. This is one way to do it. I would argue it's not a good way. And the reason being is we don't really know how we're going to make that additional 5%. And so specifically with revenue, what I like to do is I like to break this down to the lowest level of inputs we have. And while this might seem like a little bit more work, it's also going to help business owners understand where their revenue is coming from and what levers, I like to talk about levers, what levers you can pull to create more revenue during the year. So let's walk through one of these. We'll do them both, but let's walk through one of these and let's show you what that would look like in forecasting. So we're going to rename this sheet and we're going to name this old forecast. And we're going to rename this sheet and we're going to call this new forecast. Okay. So the first thing we're going to concentrate on is this membership revenue. So I'm going to do just a header here, membership revenue. Hold that. And if we look at membership revenue, there's really two primary things that go into membership revenue. There's number of members we have and how much we're charging those members. And that's really the inputs that we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off down here and I'm going to say beginning members. I'm going to do something down here for ending members. Let's just do again a little bit of formatting here so we have a nice clean spreadsheet. Start in January. And we're going to forecast our membership total for each month. This in here, let's underline that, and we are about ready to go. Okay, let's widen our columns. Like I said, we are doing this from the start, so you kind of get to see how the sausage is made here. There we go. Okay, so we have everything by month. Now, to begin the year, we know that we have 170 members. And there's a couple things that happen with our membership each month, right? So somebody can cancel, and that's called churn. The churn is our canceled membership. The next thing that can happen is we can get new members. And the way we get those members it can be lots of different ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down here, we're going to put an assumption that we're going to churn. And I like to highlight my assumptions so that way I know what I can change. And we're going to just assume that our churn is 1.5%. So in other words, each month, 1.5% of our members are canceling their membership. And that's not uncommon in the fitness space. Matter of fact, we've actually seen much higher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that times negative 1.5%. And that's going to give me negative 2.55. Now, I do not we can't lose 0.55 of a member. That would be an ugly situation. So I'm going to round this number just to the nearest 0 digits. And there we go, negative 3 members. Now, we also know that we want to create new members. And here's where we can start to kind of see some of the things in our budgeting and our throughout our financial statements start to play together. And so there's really 2 ways that we can predominantly get new members. The first is we can get organic growth. So in other words, just think of one of our members talking to their neighbor saying, "Hey, love this fitness place. I think you should sign up." And that's organic growth. We didn't really pay for that lead. At least we can't connect any current marketing dollars to that lead. So that's really kind of how we think of organic growth. The other way we can do this is we can do advertising, right? And so this now, I know we're just forecasting revenue, but now we're actually talking about what our marketing spend is going to be as well. And so we're going to do marketing spend. So organic growth, I'll line up here. Nice and clean, organic, marketing. Those are our 2 ways that we're going to grow. I indent those so we can see them. And we think our organic growth can be 1%. Now, I want to show you why this is important, and we might not have realized this point that I'm going to show you if we would have just done a 5% growth. So 1%, we think we can grow 1% per month. Let's do this here. Now for each month, we're going to roll this forward. And again, I'm going to round this because we can't get 0.7 members. And there we go. So we began the month with 170. We ended January with 169. So what did we begin in February with? 169. And then each month, this would just continually go out. And I'll fix this here in a second. We have to drag this formula over. Remember, this formula is just summing up our activity. See here, it's just a sum, C5 through C9. And here we are taking our members from the last month. Perfect. There we go. So if we continued to churn at 1.5% and grow at 1%, we would have a net loss of members by 166. That's kind of far away from that 5%. So now we need to go into our marketing spend. So I might not know how I'm going to do my marketing. Maybe I do. Maybe I know that I have been successful running Facebook ads. We're not going to get into the marketing budget. That's a whole other discussion. But at the end of the day, I know that my customer acquisition cost, my CAC, is approximately equal to $100 per member. And you might say, whoa, it cost me $100 to get a new member. But remember, and maybe we haven't talked about what our membership price is yet, but typically in the fitness space, it costs about 1 month of revenue to get 1 member. So if it's going to cost us $100 and I do a monthly marketing spend, and I'm just going to do dollars out here. I know that I want to market heavier in the fall, so I'm going to spend $6,500 in marketing here. I know that my summers are going to go down. I'm going to decrease my marketing spend down to $3,000. And January's big new year. We're going to get that. And then we're just going to go with our normal. We're going to phase that down. Okay. Now, if I really wanted to get into this, and I do for most of the budgets I do, but if I really wanted to get into this, I'd look at CAC by month, by season, because here's the thing. If I could just easily get a new member by spending $100, why would I not spend thousands upon thousands of dollars? So it's never really this linear, But for this exercise, this is how we're going to do it. And so for marketing, I know that I can divide this by this, and we're going to get 100 new members. Now, that's probably not very realistic. And here's the other thing. Neither is my budget. I'm not going to be spending $60,000 a year on marketing, because if I look at last year, what did I spend on marketing? I spent $31,000. So I'm over double my marketing budget. And on top of that, that $31,000 is spent on events and a whole bunch of other things that we're not necessarily going to do. So let's get our CAC equal to 1 month of a membership. There we go. And let's get our budget down to a normal amount where we spent last year. Just divide all these by 2. Oopsie, not that way. And I know I'm kind of rolling through Excel quickly, but if you guys want to slow down the video, you can certainly see the formulas I am using in here. Nothing really that complicated yet. So we think we could have 33 new members here. Let's round this. This is giving us a kind of long tail weird number. Round that to 0 places. And there we have our new members. And if we roll this through, like what I just did there, hold on. I need to lock my formula there. Okay. Now if I roll this through, there you can see, we think we're going to go from 170 to 356 new members. Now, last thing we need here is we need to know what our monthly membership rate is. Okay. And I'm going to highlight all of this too, because I want this to be something that I can change. And so right now my monthly membership is $140. So I'm just going to assume that that's going to be the same throughout. However, I also know that every April I increase my prices. I'm going to increase my price. Now here's how I would build this. Let me show you this. Rate increase. So if I knew I was going to do it in April, I would do this as a dynamic cell. And here's why. Let me show you. If I just put in 3%, what I can do, and I know I'm going to increase in April, so I'm going to take that times 1 plus this. Okay, and then I'm going to make the rest of my cells equal to that, the new price. Okay, so now I'm going to increase my prices by 3%. But what if I wanted to just see what it would look like if I increase my prices only to 2% or 5%? I can see all of that. So now we can put this together. We can now put in membership revenue. Okay, and we want to double line this one. There we go. And so what is that? It is our price, or our rate, times our members. And here we can see what our budgeted spend is. Now, I kind of did this on the fly. I was kind of coming up with some of these numbers, for instance, our CAC, for instance, our monthly membership rate. And you can see in here, I have forecasted $474,000 in membership revenue. What did we do last year? We had $295,000 revenue. So if we were able to execute this plan, we know that we would have, we can just put this right here. This I'm going to say it's fiscal year 24 rev. And then just for reference, I'm going to put fiscal year 23 rev right here. That way, when I'm reviewing my forecast and my budget, it's really easy to see this one by one. And then I'm going to put what my increase is here. So, whoopsie, that formula. There we go. We have a 60% increase. So, not a 5% increase, a 60% increase. That's wonderful. Now, again, I was kind of making up some of these numbers in here. If I really, really wanted, and with most of my clients, when I'm budgeting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this churn and I'm going to do churn by month. Because I know that 1.5% might be my average churn, but I also know that my churn in the summer months might be 10, 11, 12, 13%, and in January it might be 1%. So I'm gonna figure out my churn in a little bit of a different way. I'm actually going to look back at what my actual churn is. And when I do my forecast, I'll actually put it here. Actual churn for 2023 was 3%. So you might be looking at this and you might say, okay, this is great, but why is this valuable? And if you can't see from just this process kind of what we went through, why this is valuable, let's talk through it. So the first thing is this develops some great KPIs for me, right? I now see in here my customer acquisition cost needs to be 150. So each month I can track that. What is my customer acquisition cost this month? Is it 120? Is it 180? Is it 200? And why that's valuable is I know that if my customer acquisition cost is $190 or $200, the method of marketing I'm using might not be the most efficient method, right? I should be looking for something else. So it's really valuable to be able to track that. Another thing I might be able to look at is, well, what is my churn? Is my churn averaging 1.5%? No, my churn this year is averaging 4%. Well, why is my churn averaging 4%? Maybe I need to start talking to some members who cancel and figure out why they cancel. Maybe there's a trend. Maybe there's some instructors they don't like. Maybe we've changed something internally. If I didn't forecast my churn or budget my churn, then I would have no idea what's normal, what I'm expecting, if I'm outperforming that, or worse, if I'm underperforming that. So this gives us a ton of different KPIs, and now we understand here's how we're going to drive this revenue. Now, a much more likely thing is that this is going to go in here. And let's just change some numbers here. Let's change that to 2. Let's change this to 4. This is 1. Change our membership rate down to 125. 125. Let's change this. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. Okay. So what happens more likely than not is I go through this process with a business owner, and this is what happens. Is they're feeling really good about their numbers. I actually go through and compute what their actual churn was last year. I ask them, well, what do you think organic growth can be this year? Why do we think that's going to happen? What do we think it was last year? Is there any numbers we can look into and figure out what it was last year? We compute what our customer acquisition cost was. We have our monthly membership rate. And you might say, oh, hey, this looks out of whack. Not really. There's plenty of fitness concepts that are spending 2 months of membership revenue on customer acquisition concepts, right? Customer acquisition costs. And so this is what we do. We put all this in here, and lo and behold, look at this. What? I'm going to do 1.5% less than I did last year? And the answer is yes. That's exactly what's going to happen if we hit these KPIs. So what we need to do now is we need to make a goal where we can't have 4% churn this year. It has to be 3%. We have to put a plan in place. And look at that. Just by changing churn alone, now all of a sudden we have 4% growth. Or maybe my churn, I know it's going to be 4%. It's been 4% for the last 5 years. I could do anything under the sun. I've done all these different strategies, and it's going to be 4%. Well, what if we need a different rate increase? This is why we made this a dynamic cell. So now I can say, okay, I want to do a 5% increase. Look at that. Now all of a sudden our revenue is at least break even. Now what we might need to do is we might need to spend more in marketing dollars. And actually, I'm going to go back to this. I should have made this yellow cell because we can update this. But maybe I know I need to spend more on marketing in the summers because I need to get more members in the summers. So we're going to change that to 2,500. Look at that. Now I got 5% growth. I'm going to invest a little bit more in marketing. Now, all of a sudden, I've committed to $34,000 in marketing, probably plus some additional events, things like that. That's actually an additional marketing spend I was going to spend last year. But now I can justify that investment, right? I'm going to invest $3,000 more in marketing, and that's going to create $15,000 more in revenue. Not a bad return. So that's why it's really important that we budget and we forecast for revenue at an activity level. Now, let's go through real quick, and let's do the second one. Let's do walk-in classes. Okay, we're done with this one. We're going to do walk-in classes. Now, before I move on, you might say, okay, well, how do I drop this in? What I like to do is I just copy QuickBooks format. It has all the formulas already in here. And we're not talking through expenses in this, but paste that there. We're going to get all that correct. And get all that from. Okay, so it already has all its formulas in here. I can come in here. I can erase all of this. And we're going to put Eventually, if we were going to do the full forecast, we would put assumptions around every single one of these categories for the year. And we would do it in a very similar way to what we're doing now. I will say doing most expenses outside of payroll is typically pretty easy, but I'm going to erase all this out. Now, you can see I'm carefully avoiding my formulas. There we go. Almost there. I'm sure you're enjoying watching the deleting. Great. Oh, a ton more. Okay, so now you can get the drift. Deleting everything out. Oh, there's two more. We're gonna finish. Okay, so now that I've forecasted my membership revenue, what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to put a plus or an equals formula that gets you to the same place. I'm going to go over to my forecast and I'm going to say I want that to equal January's membership revenue. And look at that now, all of a sudden our financials and our budget is populated with our membership revenue number that we just computed. Okay, so now we're going to go through in just a few minutes and we are going to do class revenue. That was our second item, right? So same thing, we're going to copy down our period here. That way I can see exactly which period I'm looking at. Now, our classes, we know what our class price is. We know what our class membership, walk-ins are. Okay, so our class prices are $49. Now, this is a relatively simplistic model. I'm going to highlight this again so I know that I can change it. A relatively simplistic model. We might have 3 or 4 different prices for different classes. And so we might be doing this 3 or 4 different times. I'm going to pretend that in this example, we just have one different type of class. It might be a multitude of different types of yoga classes, but it's going to cost $49 per class for you to walk in. So just know that this is a little bit more of a simple walkthrough on how to create this sort of revenue forecast, but know that we would, in most cases, be forecasting out maybe 5 different classes, 5 different class types, 5 different walk-in structures, things like that. Now, here's one of the things I just said, I just, at the very beginning of this video, said, hey, don't just copy last year and say 5%. And I think that that's valuable. But what I am going to do is I'm going to capture what my walk-in total is here from last year. So I'm going to capture that by month. So go down here. I'm actually going to say prior year walk-ins. You can see I like to label my work so that way if I go through here or if I have my staff go through here, whatever it may be, they know exactly what is in here. This is just an in the month formula to pull our date so we don't have to manually type out each date. They can go out here. There's our formula to get the last day of the month for each month. Okay. Now, I know that last year my price was $49. And so usually I would have the data. I would be able to fill in right here exactly how many walk-ins we had. In almost all of my clients' forecasts, I'm actually pulling that data separately. It's not coming from QuickBooks, or maybe it is, but I'm pulling it from a different report. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to divide this by our $49 so that we can kind of get an approximate amount of walk-ins that we had. And so there you can see we have our walk-ins. Okay, so now what I want to do is do a forecasted walk-ins. And again, we're going to come down here. Now, we had kind of assumed in this very first one that all of our marketing was related to memberships. Sorry, this marketing, right? It was related to memberships. But we probably also did some marketing related to classes. Now, a couple other things here, and again, we're not going to get into this just because of brevity of the video, but one of the things I might do is I actually might see if there's a correlation between my revenue for walk-ins and my revenue for memberships. That might tell me right off the bat that I can just do one forecast for memberships and then just use a simple linear regression formula. I don't think there's ever a simple linear regression formula, but a linear regression formula to then forecast out my walk-ins. So let's just see what the correlation is here. There's a built-in formula in Excel for correlations. So not very highly correlated. Something near a 1 shows that it's very highly correlated. Something, you know, as we decrease from a 1, um, it's going to be less and less correlated. So we don't have too much correlation. So in other words, we can't necessarily base too many of our assumptions based off of what we did with membership. So we're going to go back here to new forecast. And we're just going to go down here and we're going to say organic growth. Same thing. Now, if we think we can grow our organic growth up here by 1%, we're going to assume that we can do the same thing. We might also have a price increase, right? So we're going to increase our prices here by 5%. We're only going to do 3% down here. We're also going to do that in April. So we're going to put in a formula of that. Let's see, times 1 plus our rate of increase. Okay. Let's see. We're not going to increase it 1% a month. We're just going to increase it once ever. There we go. Okay. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to assume that all of our marketing in this instance is related to memberships. There is no more marketing related to class revenue. So we're just going to assume 1% organic growth. So that last year times our 1% organic growth. And let me put the formula there. There we go. Normally I would round that, but again, since we're trying to keep this under 30 minutes, I'm just going to assume that it's already rounded at that 366. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put in walk-in revenue. And our walk-in revenue is just a function of our forecasted walk-ins times our class price. And there we go. I drag this formula all the way down. I'm going to format it. Bold it. You can format it however you choose. And let's add up what we have here. We're going to do the same thing that we did above up here. So I'm going to copy and paste this down. $238,000 of revenue there. What did we do last year? $230,000 revenue, 3% increase. How did we get the 3% increase? Well, we raised our prices by 3% and we got 1% growth. So we got a little bit over 3%. Makes sense, right? But now we know how we're getting it. It's not just a 5% increase. So this is a much more effective way to forecast our revenue. We now know our inputs. We now have KPIs. We now have a walk-in forecast, so we can actually check our number of walk-ins versus what we actually get each month this year. Just a much better tool to use for business strategy, for planning purposes, to actually understand what's going on in the business, rather than just saying, well, hey, our revenue, we forecast 5%. It was only up 3%. Well, why is it not up as much as it was? Well, this way we know exactly why. We know that maybe we didn't spend as much in marketing. Maybe our churn rate was higher. Maybe our organic growth rate wasn't higher. So it gives us a lot better insights to run our business. So I appreciate you joining me. Thanks for joining me. I know we just went through revenue. Ooh, let me cap it off here by adding in our revenue. There we go. Copy this down. So this year we now have forecasted $549,000 revenue versus $526,000 last year. So we have a little bit of a bump. This was just going through revenue, going through the expenses, everything like that. It would take some additional time, and I really just kind of wanted to introduce everybody to how we would forecast revenue and why it's important to dig down a little bit below the surface. Don't think of budgeting as a financial exercise. Think of it as a strategic exercise. Budgeting really is what helps you drive where you want to go in your business. Maybe you don't want to grow 5%. Maybe you want to grow 3%. Maybe this person couldn't get the number of instructors they need to grow 5%. Unless we forecast this way, we have no way of being able to tell that. I'm Matt Krieger from Krieger Analytics. I'd love to help you with your business. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Thank you.